New York, late 1970s. A city drowning in blood, corruption, and broken streets. From the shadows of the Bronx, one truck driver rose to build an empire called the Asphalt Kings. He defied the Italian mafia, refused to carry cartel cocaine, and waged war against the city itself. But every crown has a price, and Marcus Rivera buried his own family to wear it. This isn't just a story of power, it's the tragedy of a man who turned streets into a kingdom, only to discover that the Iron Crown weighs heavier than the coffin. Welcome to the Kingdom of Asphalt. The summer of 1977 baked New York City in a relentless haze. Trash piled on curbs, rotting in the heat. Sirens wailed in the distance like an anthem of decay. The blackout riots had scarred the Bronx only weeks before, leaving burned-out storefronts and hollow-eyed children wandering streets that smelled of smoke and desperation. On 138th Street, the asphalt itself seemed to sweat under the weight of broken promises. Spray-painted crowns tagged every wall and lamppost, symbols of small-time crews claiming corners like kingdoms. Marcus Rivera walked these streets like a ghost that refused to fade. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark Puerto Rican features carved with years of struggle far beyond his 25. His father had died on these very streets, crushed beneath a rig when the union bosses and mafia cut corners on safety. The city never cared. The police wrote it off as just another accident. But Marcus had memorized every face who had profited from his father's blood. That memory was gasoline, and tonight he was ready to strike the first match. At O'Malley's bar, the air was thick with smoke and cheap whiskey. A jukebox wheezed out a faded disco tune, while a crowd of truck drivers, day laborers, and small-time hustlers drowned their paychecks in liquor. Marcus pushed open the door, his leather jacket draped heavy on his shoulders despite the heat. Conversations faltered when he entered. People knew him, not for what he'd done, but for what he might do. The kind of man who kept his silence sharp as a knife. "Marcus," Raoul grunted from the corner booth. His older brother, thick-necked and wild-eyed, slammed back a shot. "You're late." "I had business," Marcus replied, sliding into the booth. His voice was calm, low, but it carried the weight of a man who measured every word. Raoul leaned in. "Vincent Moretti's men are running trucks through Hunts Point. They take a cut from every driver. Same bastards who killed Papa." The name burned like acid in Marcus's chest. Moretti, the Italian don who owned the construction unions, the politicians, the very streets they walked on. Marcus lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his eyes. "Then it's time we stop begging for scraps. Time the Riveras take what we're owed." At that moment, Camila slipped into the booth. She was younger, her beauty sharpened by intelligence. A college dropout who read more about Wall Street than the Bible, she carried a notebook full of numbers instead of prayers. "You're talking about war," she whispered. "You have no soldiers. No money." Marcus leaned back, smoke curling from his lips. "We don't need soldiers. We have drivers. Every man behind a wheel is a weapon. And asphalt is the battlefield." Raoul grinned, teeth flashing like a predator's. Camila's eyes widened in fear, but also in recognition. For the first time, she saw her brother not as a dreamer, but as a man stepping into destiny. Hours later, Marcus stood alone beneath the Willis Avenue Bridge. The city loomed, its skyline jagged against a blood-red sunset. He pressed his hand to the cracked asphalt beneath his boots, whispering like it was a vow. "They built this city on our backs. Now we'll take it back, inch by inch, street by street, until New York kneels." A crown of spray paint gleamed faintly on the wall beside him. Tomorrow, everyone would know the name. The Asphalt Kings were born. The Bronx woke early. By 4 a.m., Hunts Point Market pulsed like a steel heart. Reefers idling, forklifts zigzagging, men barking orders over clouds of exhaust. If you wanted to feed New York, you came here. If you wanted to tax it, you came with muscle and a clipboard stamped Moretti Union Local 412. Marcus came with neither. He and Raul crouched behind a row of stacked lettuce crates, sweat bleeding through their work shirts. Camila had mapped the market's arteries on butcher paper back at Mama Lucia's kitchen table. Which docks took seafood, which sheds held produce, where the union stewards counted envelopes. Marcus had stared at those lines until they looked like veins waiting on a knife. 2 stewards at Dock C, 1 walking the yard, Raul muttered, peering over the crates. We can crack their skulls and... No, Marcus said. We replaced the skulls. He rose, brushed off the grime, and walked straight toward Dock C as a 40-foot rig lumbered backward to the bumpers. The old Puerto Rican driver leaning from the cab looked like he'd been carved from road salt. Sun-creased eyes, fists like cinder blocks. A union steward in a nylon jacket climbed the step, stuck his head into the cab, and spoke with a smile that had no warmth. That's Monroe Produce, Raul whispered behind Marcus. Evelyn Ross's father owns it. That's a Moretti account. Marcus kept walking. Morning, he said, stopping at the base of the cab. The steward shot him a quick, unfriendly glance. The driver's eyes flicked down, wary. Keep moving, kid, the steward said. Local business. Marcus nodded to the driver instead. How long you been hauling, viejo? Too long, the driver said, ignoring the steward. 14 hours White Plains to here. Overtime they'll shave. Always do. Be ashamed, the steward cut in. If your name ended up on the... What's your cut? Marcus asked the driver, casual as a weather report. 10%? 15? To park on a dock you already paid for with your dues? The steward stiffened. Who the hell are you? Marcus showed him his hands. Grease stains, old blisters, a life of work. A man who thinks he can get you to 25% less and make it stick. Beat it, the steward snarled, jabbing a thumb toward the yard. 2 goons peeled away from a knot of men and started their way. The driver's eyes narrowed. Less? How? By not paying them, Marcus said, and smiled, not friendly, not cruel, just certain. You pay us. The goons arrived. Raul stepped into their path, rolled his shoulders, and let out a slow breath that smelled like gasoline and last night's whiskey. Marcus didn't look back. He kept his eyes on the driver. We don't do charity, the steward said. We do insurance. Marcus's voice dropped. Insurance is something that shows up when it matters. Where were you when Ortiz's boy got cut open by a box cutter for refusing a second envelope? Where were you when my father's rig lost its brakes because a Moretti foreman bought scrap pads and forged the inspection? The steward's grin faltered. He barked at the goons. Remove them. Raul moved first, short, brutal. He chopped a wrist, rolled an elbow, sent the first goon into a stack of onion bags that burst like grenades. The second reached for a billy. Raul grabbed his belt, yanked, and drove a knee that folded the man like bad scaffolding. It took 6 seconds. Then the forklifts kept moving, the reefers kept humming, and Dock C looked exactly the same, except everyone was watching. Marcus never raised his voice. We're not here to fight. We're here to work. Today, every driver who wants out of their extra fees pulls to Dock C. You'll load and go under us. No second envelope. No fines. If someone touches you, we answer. The steward laughed thinly, blood spotting his lip. You and what army? Marcus tipped his chin toward the edge of the lot, where 6 battered trucks rolled in 2x2, each with a crown spray-painted low on the fender. Drivers stepped out, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Irish, black, A motley line that looked nothing like a Union poster, but exactly like New York. Raoul cracked his knuckles. Army's late, but pretty. The steward paled. This is a Moretti yard. Not anymore, Marcus said. It's a market. Markets choose to pay the best price. He turned his back on the steward, deliberate disrespect, and addressed the nearest cluster of drivers in Spanish. Men, if you want out, line up with the crowns. If you want to keep paying the same men who call you dogs when your back's turned, keep standing there. Silence. Then the old driver cut his engine, hopped down, and walked over. My name's Luis Santoro, he said, sticking out his hand. I ain't a dog. Marcus gripped it. I'm Marcus Rivera. Asphalt Kings. A ripple passed through the crowd, the way a word becomes a thing. More drivers moved. The steward looked around, calculation replacing anger. His hand disappeared into his jacket. Raoul stiffened. Marcus didn't move, but his eyes flicked, once, to Camila, who stood at the edge of the dock in a long denim jacket, holding a clipboard and a Polaroid camera. She raised the camera, snapped a photo of the steward's hand in his jacket. The snap sounded like a warning shot. When the picture spat out, she shook it once and lifted it to show the men nearby. Smile, she said. Evidence is cheaper than funerals. The steward's hand froze. Then he scowled and withdrew it empty. You're dead, he whispered as he backed away. You just don't know the date. Put it in your calendar, Camila said without looking up, already writing receipts, names, loads, route numbers. Dock C is open. By noon the first convoy left the market without paying the second envelope for the first time in years. Luis led, Raoul rode shotgun in the second truck, and Marcus took the rear, windows down, listening to CB chatter leapfrog along the Bruckner like sparks on a line. King to convoy, you reading? Luis rasped through the mic. Reading, Marcus said. He watched the mirror. A black Lincoln floated in the distance, too clean for the cross Bronx. You expecting company? Raoul asked over the band. Always, Marcus said. The Lincoln followed to the interchange, then slipped off toward Manhattan. Marcus exhaled. The convoy rolled, delivery receipts stamped, pockets heavier for once. Drivers honked as they peeled off to their routes. 3 short blasts that sounded like relief. Raoul hooped. We just robbed the bank and they thanked us. We gave them a better bank, Marcus said. But his stomach stayed tight. Winning a minute is not the same as holding a block. Holding a block is not the same as owning a city. And owning a city paints a target on your soul. When he pulled back into Hunts Point, Camila was waiting, hair damp with sweat, pen ink smeared on her fingers. She looked 10 feet tall. You see the numbers? She said, shoving the clipboard at him. If we keep even half the drivers who flipped today, we can refinance the 2 trucks we still owe on in 3 weeks. After that we build a yard, Marcus said. Not borrowed, not hidden. Ours. She tapped a line of figures. And we'll need protection. Not fists. Paper. Permits. A shell company that looks clean. A real accountant who doesn't faint at the word cash. Raoul dunked his head in a water barrel and came up grinning like a dog. Or we just punch anyone who says no. Punch all you want, Camila said. But if a city inspector shows up, he doesn't care about your right hook. Marcus nodded. Start the shells. Crown hauling, Asphalt Kings logistics, something dull enough the city forgets it exists. Camila smirked. Dull is the most dangerous thing in this town. A shadow reached across the dock. It belonged to a man in a camel hair coat despite the heat, flanked by 2 drivers with the posture of ex-boxers. His hair was gray at the temples, his eyes the pale blue of winter water. He smiled like a priest lighting a candle. Mr. Rivera, he said, as if they'd met at a charity dinner. I'm Anthony DeLuca. I buy a lot of tomatoes that come through this market, and I pay a lot of men to make sure they're not bruised. Raul edged forward. Marcus lifted a finger. Wait. You work for Moretti, Marcus said. I work with everyone, DeLuca said. My boss reads the morning papers. He likes to be informed. Tell him we're not a charity, Marcus said. And we don't tithe. DeLuca's smile didn't falter. Mr. Moretti appreciates initiative. He made his bones the same way once. He also appreciates tribute, because he knows the city is not a business. It's a church, and everyone pays the plate. Then tell him I'm starting a new religion, Marcus said. The plate goes to the men who actually carry the city on their backs. DeLuca chuckled. You're brave or young. Possibly both. Either way, Mr. Moretti invites you to dinner. Tonight, 9 o'clock. Ross House on 52nd. Evelyn Ross's father runs the table. It'll be civil. There will be linen. Linen, Raul muttered. Fancy napkins to wrap our heads when they crack them open. Marcus kept his eyes on DeLuca. We'll come. DeLuca tipped his head. Be punctual. In our world, that's respect. When he left, the heat seemed to climb another notch. Raul swore. We walk in, we're not walking out. Camila scribbled a name on the margin, Evelyn Ross. She circled it hard enough to score the paper. Monroe Produce. The truck at Dock C. She's the connective tissue. Marcus took the pen and underlined the name once. Then we need to know who she is before 9. The Ross house squatted behind a private hedge like money hiding its face. At 8:45, Marcus stood outside in a thrift store suit, collar tight against his throat. Raul had a blade in his boot. Camila was not coming, by design. She'd insisted on shadowing the guest list, calling in favors from a law school friend at the Daily News. Don't look impressed, Raul muttered as a waiter opened the door with a bow. Rich men smell fear like dogs smell steak. Good, Marcus said. Let them smell hunger instead. The dining room was a curated fantasy of old New York. Mahogany, oil paintings, a chandelier that hummed like a hive. Men in summer suits turned their heads as Marcus and Raul were escorted in. At the head of the table sat Vincent Moretti himself. Silver hair slicked back, the posture of a king, hands soft as velvet over a hardness you could feel across the room. To his right, Charles Ross, Evelyn's father, tall, ruddy, the smile of a man who'd privatized the word opportunity. And there, 2 seats down, Evelyn. She was not an ornament. She was watching the room with the alertness of a reporter even without a notebook, wide eyes missing nothing, a champagne flute held like a prop she'd been handed at birth. When her gaze met Marcus's, a flicker crossed her face, curiosity, not contempt. Mr. Rivera, Moretti said, rising. His voice was music without warmth. Welcome. You caused quite a stir before lunch. The market belongs to the men who feed the city, Marcus said, taking his seat when Moretti gestured. We just stopped charging them twice. Ross laughed, full and booming. Straight to ideology. I like him already. Silverware chimed. Wine was poured. Conversation took the shape of ritual, then turned, gradually, to business. Moretti's eyes sharpened. You understand why we collect, he said softly. Control is expensive. Police pensions. Inspectors with appetites. Politicians with campaigns. You think you cut costs by cutting tribute. You cut cover. We're not asking for cover, Marcus said. We'll make our own. You will, Moretti agreed, until a state trooper decides to sit on your yard for a week, and the city says your trucks violate a noise ordinance passed in 1943, and your drivers find their licenses under review. We don't control those men. We know them. Ross leaned forward, red face affable. You want to feed your family, son? You join the family. Whose? Marcus asked. Ross's smile didn't change. The one that built this town. The one that can set a bid on a bridge at 8 a.m. and have the ribbon cut by noon. You want a yard? You'll have 3. You want a fleet? We'll float you paper. In exchange, a small percentage. And loyalty. Which is to say obedience, Marcus said. Which is to say reality, Moretti finished. Ambition is a young man's virtue. Patience is how he stays alive long enough to spend it. Marcus let the silence stand until it meant something. He could feel Raoul coil beside him, ready to testify with his fists. He could feel Evelyn's attention like a wire. What's the percentage? Marcus asked. 15, Moretti said. And a seat at the table. You'd be useful. You have the look of inevitability. Raoul snorted. 15 is robbery. 10, Marcus said. And I pick the routes we control. We don't run powder. We run freight. Moretti's mouth twitched, the smallest tell. 12, he said. And the routes are a conversation. Say yes, and your life becomes easier in 1,000 small ways you'll never see. And if I say no, then your life becomes difficult in 1,000 small ways you'll never understand, Ross said, still smiling. Evelyn set down her glass. Or we could try dessert, she said brightly, cutting the wire. And let the men remember there are witnesses. Moretti glanced at her, indulgent. My daughter is fearless, Ross said. Takes after her mother. I take after the truth, Evelyn murmured. She looked at Marcus. There was a question in her eyes, and a warning, choose the city, or it will choose for you. Marcus folded his hands. 12, he said finally. For 90 days. A trial. After that, we revisit, with numbers on the table, not stories. Moretti nodded once. 90 days. I admire a man who wants a clock on fate. He lifted his glass. To new friends. Crystal sang. Raoul didn't drink. Marcus did. 1 sip, enough to honor ritual, not enough to cloud the road ahead. When they stood to leave, Evelyn brushed past him in the vestibule, as if by accident. Up close, he saw that her watch was practical, not jeweled, her shoes scuffed at the toe. She wasn't pretending to observe. She observed. You made a deal with a storm, she said quietly. Storms don't honor clocks. Clocks don't honor storms either, Marcus said. They outlast them. She almost smiled. I know who you are, she said. And I don't know who you'll be after 90 days. I'm Evelyn. Marcus. Don't get romantic with the city, she said. It never loves you back. He wanted to tell her he didn't need love, just latitude. But he said nothing. Outside, the summer night hummed, neon bleeding into puddles. Raoul lit a cigarette with shaking hands. We just shook hands with the devil, Raoul said. We sold him a timer, Marcus said. He glanced at the hedge, felt eyes where there should have been leaves. He looked again, nothing. But the hairs on his neck stayed up all the way back to the Bronx. At Mama Lucia's kitchen table at midnight, Camila spread fresh numbers like tarot. 12% means we break even on the yard in 8 weeks, if they don't add creative fees. We'll need a friendly city clerk to speed the permit. And drivers, more. Louis says he can bring 8. We need 25. We need a mechanic who'll work nights, Raoul said. We need a fence for parts when things go sideways. We need a reputation, Marcus said. By Friday. He looked at the Polaroid she taped to the corner of the table, the steward's hand buried in his jacket, frozen at the moment of decision. In the corner, Camila had scrawled 2 words. Proof wins. Friday, Marcus repeated. We take a route Moretti doesn't want to lose. We deliver every load on time. No losses. No schemes. Then we do it again. And again. Until even their men call us first. Raoul grinned, savage and proud. Hunts Point to Hell's Kitchen? Through Midtown? With Moretti's cops on every corner? You're insane. Maybe, Marcus said. He thought of the chandelier shimmering over Moretti's patient eyes. He thought of Evelyn's warning. He thought of his father's hands, stained black with a city that never paid the debt it owed. But insanity is cheap. Asphalt is expensive. Let's pour. Outside, the city beat its sleepless rhythm. In the yard, 2 trucks waited, crowns low on their fenders, paint still tacky. Marcus stepped into the night and pawned the metal, hot from the day. 90 days. Clocks ticked everywhere, theirs loudest of all. The Bronx doesn't sleep, it paces. Midnight to dawn, the borough hummed with restless nerves, sirens, bodega radios, muffled arguments behind thin walls. But Hunts Point was different. Hunts Point roared. Diesel engines coughed awake, trailers hissed, forklifts screeched. It was the artery that fed the city, and arteries meant blood. Tonight, Marcus Rivera planned to bleed it on purpose. The plan. On Camila's kitchen table, the map lay open like a battle plan. Red pencil circled Hunts Point Midtown Hell's Kitchen. She had dotted it with X's, police choke points, Moretti-owned Union depots, blocks patrolled by cartel lookouts. You run these loads clean, you earn every driver's trust, Camila said, tapping the pencil. Mess up once, we're finished. Raoul cracked his knuckles. We'll be fine. I ride shotgun in the lead truck. Anyone tries to pull something, I'll send them home in pieces. Marcus studied the map. This isn't about scaring anyone. It's about precision. We deliver every pound, on time, no excuses. That's how we win. We don't just fight the city, we replace it. Mama Lucia sat silent in her chair, rosary beads clutched tight. Her eyes never left Marcus. When he finally met them, she shook her head. Your father wanted respect, not crowns painted on trucks. Don't mistake fear for respect, hijo. Marcus leaned forward, kissed her hand. I'm not building fear, Mama. I'm building permanence. The convoy moves. At 3 a.m., the convoy rolled out, 8 battered trucks, spray-painted crowns gleaming under street lamps. Marcus took the second cab, Raoul the first, Luis Santoro guiding from the rear. The CB radios crackled with code words Camila had written down like prayers. King 1 to convoy. Roll steady. Copy, King. Crowns in the wind. They left Hunts Point stink behind, merging onto the Bruckner. Midtown's skyline shimmered ahead, glass towers like daggers waiting for blood. First block, the cops. 2 squad cars idled at the Willis Avenue exit. Everyone knew they were Moretti's men, badges bought and paid for. Their red and blues flared once, a warning. Raoul muttered into the CB. They're fishing. Marcus grabbed his mic. Keep rolling. No one stops. The squad cars pulled out, boxed the lead truck. Raoul braked hard, horn blaring. A cop strode up, flashlight slicing the cab. Papers, he said flatly. Raoul leaned out the window. A grin stretched across his face. Got him right here. He tossed the clipboard onto the asphalt. Papers fluttered everywhere. As the cop bent to grab them, Raoul hit the gas, spraying gravel into the man's face. The truck roared forward, the convoy surging after it. Kings don't stall for dogs. Raoul barked into the CB. Behind them, sirens screamed. But the convoy didn't stop. Second block, the cartel. By the time they hit Harlem, the cops had peeled off. But a darker shadow waited. 2 vans without plates, engines low, following too close. Marcus's jaw tightened. Cartel men. Through his rearview mirror, he saw a passenger lean out, shotgun glinting in streetlight. Before the blast came, Luis Santoro's rig swerved wide, clipping the van's bumper. Metal shrieked. The van spun into a fire hydrant, water exploding into the street. "Old man still has teeth," Marcus said into the CB. But the second van pressed harder. Midtown standoff. Broadway. Neon bleeding into rain-slick asphalt. The second van swerved ahead, blocking the convoy. Four masked men jumped out with bats and chains. Raul slammed his brakes. Marcus did too. For a moment, the city froze, 8 trucks idling, steam hissing, the masked men approaching. Marcus kicked open his cab door, stepped onto the asphalt. He didn't draw a gun. He didn't shout. He just stood, calm as stone, eyes locked on the man with the bat. "You know whose road this is?" the man barked. Marcus's voice carried, steady and low. "It's ours now." The man lifted the bat, then froze. Because from the cabs, every driver stepped out together. 8 men. 10. 15. Puerto Rican, Dominican, Irish, black. Each with a wrench, a tire iron, a chain. The sound of doors slamming echoed like drums of war. The masked men looked around, outnumbered, outmatched. Their leader spat, cursed, then backed into the van. In seconds they were gone. Marcus climbed back into his cab. The CB clicked alive with Raul's laugh. "That's how crowns roll." The delivery. At dawn, the convoy reached Hell's Kitchen. Every load delivered, every receipt signed. Not a pound missing. Drivers shook Marcus's hand, one by one. Luis clapped his shoulder. "You did what no one else dared. You made us believe." Camila's voice crackled on the CB, her tone sharp but trembling with pride. "Numbers look good. You're officially in business." Marcus exhaled. For the first time, it felt real. The Asphalt Kings weren't a rumor anymore. They were a fact. The shadow. But facts cast shadows. From a high-rise office in Midtown, Vincent Moretti watched the convoy roll through his city, untouched. He sipped espresso, the bitterness sharp on his tongue. "Arrogant," he murmured. Anthony DeLuca stood behind him. "They delivered. On time. The drivers are talking. Hunt's Point is slipping." Moretti's lips curved into a smile that was all ice. "Then it's time the boy learns. This city doesn't crown kings. It buries them." The city woke angry. By sunrise, news had already leaked down the pipeline. A convoy had rolled through Hunt's Point, into the belly of Midtown, and back out clean. No envelopes paid. No trucks burned. No men broken. On the docks, drivers whispered the name Asphalt Kings like it was both a prayer and a dare. By noon, Vincent Moretti heard it echoing even in Little Italy. Moretti's response. Inside a paneled office above a construction site on the west side, Moretti sat with a cigar unlit between his fingers. Below, cement mixers churned, steel beams clanged into place. To the untrained eye, it was just another project, another tower scraping the sky. To Moretti, it was control incarnate. Anthony DeLuca shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "They're young. They don't know the cost of what they did." Moretti finally lit the cigar, smoke curling like scripture. "Then we show them the cost." He tapped ash into a crystal tray. "No direct war. Wars burn money, not rivals. We take one of theirs. Something loud enough to send a message." DeLuca hesitated. "Which one?" Moretti smiled, cold and precise. "The loud brother. Raul." Setting the trap. That evening, Raul Rivera was exactly where Moretti's scouts expected him to be, at El Cielo, a dive bar near the Harlem River, drinking cheap whiskey and boasting about the convoy. 8 trucks. Raul shouted to anyone listening. 8. We didn't pay those Italian bastards a cent. Who runs these streets now? We do. The crowd cheered, half from belief, half from free shots Raoul kept buying. He thrived on noise. It was why Marcus needed him, and why Moretti would target him. When the three men entered, Italian suits too crisp for El Cielo, Raoul didn't flinch. He slammed his glass down and spread his arms. Here for a drink or a lesson, he barked. They smiled. Too polite. Too calm. Raoul reached for the knife in his boot. The first gunshot shattered a bottle behind the bar. Screams tore the room apart. Raoul lunged, caught one man's throat, slammed him into a jukebox that screamed static. Another slug ripped through Raoul's shoulder. Blood sprayed the linoleum. Raoul fought like a man already dead, fist smashing bone, knife carving a brutal arc. Two men fell. The third jammed a pistol into Raoul's ribs and fired twice. The crowd scattered into the night. By the time Marcus arrived, breathless, Raoul lay in a puddle of blood, jukebox still humming. Marcus dropped to his knees. Raoul's eyes fluttered open, burning even as they dimmed. They think they buried me, Raoul rasped. Blood bubbled at his lips. Tell them, crowns don't break. His hand gripped Marcus's wrist once, hard, then fell slack. The wake. At Mama Lucia's apartment, silence wrapped the family like chains. Candles flickered around Raoul's body, draped in a Puerto Rican flag. Camila stood stiff, fists clenched around her rosary. Mama Lucia wept without sound. Her tears carved new lines into her face, but her gaze burned into Marcus. You promised permanence, she whispered. This is what permanence costs. Marcus couldn't answer. He sat with Raoul's blood still crusted on his shirt, staring at the wall. Camila broke the silence. It was Moretti. No one else moves that fast, that clean. He wanted a message. Marcus finally spoke, voice flat as stone. Then we'll send one back. Retaliation. 2 nights later, Asphalt Kings trucks boxed in a Moretti-owned cement convoy near the Brooklyn Bridge. Marcus climbed down from his cab, face pale but steady, Raoul's knife tucked in his belt. The Italian drivers froze. They expected fists. Instead, Marcus ordered them out, calm as always. Leave the trucks, he said. Walk home. They did. Marcus and his men poured gasoline over the cement mixers, lit them with Raoul's lighter, and stepped back as fire consumed steel. The blaze painted the night orange, smoke curling into Manhattan's skyline. Traffic snarled for hours. Newspapers splashed the image across front pages by morning. Blood war on the bridge. Moretti had taken a brother. Marcus had taken a symbol. The unwelcome ally. At dawn, Camila stormed into Marcus's apartment, newspaper clenched in her fist. You think this makes you a king? She hissed. You declared war on a man who owns half the city's police and judges. You're not scaring him, you're feeding him. Marcus leaned against the window, Raoul's knife spitting in his hand. War was declared when Raoul hit the floor. Before Camila could answer, a voice cut through the room. You're both wrong. Marcus turned. Claire Donovan stood in the doorway. Evelyn Ross's champagne glass replaced by a notebook and tape recorder. Her eyes blazed with something between defiance and fascination. You've just handed Moretti a story, Claire said. And stories are bullets. You want to survive him? You don't need fire. You need narrative. You need the city to believe in you before he buries you. Marcus studied her, the knife still spinning. And what do you want? She smiled faintly. The truth. And maybe a front row seat when kings are made. Closing scene. That night, Marcus stood on the burned concrete of the bridge, Raoul's knife heavy in his pocket, Claire's words echoing in his head. Moretti had blood. Marcus had fire. But fire burned out unless someone fed it air. He looked out at the skyline, towers glittering like teeth, and whispered, not a vow this time but a warning. This city doesn't crown kings. We do. The Bronx carried Raoul's funeral like a scar. Streets filled with mourners, drivers parked rigs bumper to bumper along the block, horns blasting in tribute until windows rattled across tenements. To the people, Raul Rivera was a martyr. To Marcus, he was a debt carved in bone. But New York didn't pause to grieve. The morning after, the Riveras awoke to something worse than silence, attention. Whispers and fire. Newspapers screamed headlines. Blood war grips Bronx. Asphalt Kings challenge mafia rule. Camila slammed the paper onto the kitchen table. They've painted us as reckless thugs. People are scared. Investors are scared. Even drivers are scared. Marcus stared at Raoul's knife lying beside the coffee pot. Fear is currency. We'll spend it until we can afford power. Power? Camila snapped. Power without legitimacy is suicide. Raoul fought with fists, and now he's in the ground. If you fight with blood alone, you'll join him. Before Marcus could answer, a knock rattled the door. Anthony DeLuca stepped inside without waiting. Camel hair coat, pale eyes, Moretti's voice in a different throat. Two men hovered at his back. Mr. Rivera, DeLuca said smoothly, the boss requests your presence. Tonight. Mama Lucia's gasp cut the air. Camila bristled. Marcus didn't move. Where? He asked. The Ross estate, DeLuca said. Dinner. Again. But this time, Mr. Moretti insists you bring your sister. Camila stiffened. Why? DeLuca smiled, soft as a knife. Because your books impress him. He prefers to know the brains as well as the fists. The Ross estate. That night, marble floors and chandeliers swallowed the Rivera's footsteps. Camila walked stiff beside Marcus, her notebook hidden in her coat. Raoul's absence hung heavy. Vincent Moretti waited at the long table, glass of red wine untouched. Beside him sat Charles Ross, and further down, Evelyn. Her gaze found Marcus immediately. Not pity, not sympathy. Curiosity sharpened by danger. Mr. Rivera, Moretti began, your fire has impressed even your enemies. But fire burns quick. You need stone if you want to last. Camila spoke before Marcus. Stone means what? Obedience? Moretti's smile crept. Stone means politics. He gestured to Ross. The old businessman leaned forward. The city is planning a massive highway expansion. Contracts worth hundreds of millions. Moretti Construction has the inside line. But projects need subcontractors. Hauling. Asphalt. Logistics. Marcus understood instantly. You want us to carry your road? Ross raised his brows. Not want. Offer. Join the winning side, and Asphalt Kings become legitimate overnight. Your name goes on city contracts instead of police reports. Moretti sipped his wine, eyes steady on Marcus. Refuse, and you keep fighting shadows until they eat you alive. Accept, and you build an empire your children can inherit. Evelyn's warning. When the men broke for cigars, Evelyn approached Marcus in the garden. Night air smelled of roses and wet stone. You know what this is, she said. They're not offering you partnership. They're offering you chains. Marcus's jaw clenched. Chains of gold are still chains. Then why not walk away? She pressed. He looked out at Manhattan glowing across the river. Because walking away leaves Raoul in the ground and Moretti on the throne. Evelyn's eyes searched his. Then promise me one thing. When they crown you, make sure it's not just another funeral. Back in the Bronx, Camila exploded once they returned home. You even considering that deal is betrayal. Raoul died because we refused to bow. And now you kneel for a city contract? Marcus slammed his fist on the table. Raul died because we were weak. Weak men fight in alleys. Strong men sign papers that move highways. If we take those contracts, we don't just fight Moretti, we become him. Camila's voice shook. That's exactly the problem. Mama Lucia's rosary beads clicked in the silence. My sons fought for respect. But respect built on graves, it always collapses. Marcus stood, Raul's knife gleaming in his hand. Then we'll build it so strong even graves can't shake it. The offer stands. At dawn, Anthony DeLuca returned with a contract. Sign this, he said, and the Kings are subcontractors on the Cross-Bronx Expressway extension. You'll have trucks, permits, city shields. Real legitimacy. He placed a gold pen on the table. Marcus stared at it, jaw tight, eyes dark. He hadn't touched the paper yet, but every driver in the Bronx, every cop on the take, every rival crew already held their breath. With Raul buried and Moretti watching, Marcus Rivera stood at the fork. Take the deal and crown himself with gold chains. Refuse and ignite a war the city hadn't seen since the days of Al Capone. The clock ticked louder. The contract smelled like money and gasoline. It sat on Camila's kitchen table beneath a yellow bulb, its edges weighed down by an ashtray and a half-empty bottle of rum. The seal of the city of New York gleamed in blue ink, and the words Cross-Bronx Expressway Expansion, Subcontractor Agreement seemed to mock every drop of blood the Riveras had already spilled. Anthony DeLuca leaned back in his chair, camel hair coat folded neatly beside him. He was calm, precise, the perfect courier for Vincent Moretti's will. His pale eyes flicked from Marcus to Camila, then back to the contract. All it takes, DeLuca said softly, is a signature. One pen stroke, and you boys go from outlaws to businessmen. From rats and alleys to kings in daylight. Raul's absence hung in the air like a ghost. His chair at the table was empty, pushed back just enough that no one could bring themselves to move it. The wound was still fresh, and every word DeLuca spoke scraped against it. Camila adjusted her glasses and tapped the contract with her pen. And what exactly does this paper crown cost us, Mr. DeLuca? Because nothing from Moretti comes free. DeLuca smiled. 12% of gross. City takes its cut, Moretti takes his cut, you take the rest. Everyone eats. Marcus said nothing. He lit a cigarette, smoke curling into the low ceiling, and stared at the city seal as if it were an enemy. Camila's voice sharpened. And when inspectors suddenly find violations? When cops show up to harass our drivers? That's not 12%, that's death by 1,000 cuts. DeLuca's smile widened. That's why you need us. Insurance. You pay tribute, and we make sure the cuts don't bleed. Silence filled the kitchen. Mama Lucia sat in the corner, rosary beads sliding through her fingers, eyes fixed on Marcus. At last Marcus crushed his cigarette into the ashtray, leaned forward, and signed. The pen scratched across paper like a blade on concrete. Good, DeLuca said, folding the contract. You'll thank us one day. When he left, Camila slammed the notebook shut. You just chained us to the same men who killed Raul. Marcus met her eyes, calm and cold. No, I just bought us time. Chains can be broken. Deadlines can't. The yard. By week's end, Asphalt Kings had their first official city yard, a fenced-off strip near the Harlem River, littered with rusting rigs and busted tires. On paper, it was Crown Hauling and Logistics LLC. In reality, it was a fortress. Camila hired 2 accountants from her old law school contacts, men who didn't ask questions as long as they got paid in cash. She built a shadow ledger, one book for the city, another for the Kings. Raul would have laughed at the sight. Marcus in a pressed shirt, shaking hands with city engineers, while Camila scribbled numbers into forms stamped with official seals. But beneath the suits, Drivers still wore wrenches on their belts, and trucks still bore crowns sprayed low on their fenders. "Paper crowns," Luis Santoro muttered, watching Marcus sign delivery receipts. "Shiny, but they burn faster than paint." Marcus only smiled. "Paper crowns buy us ink. Ink buys us permanence." The first job. The first city delivery came on a Monday morning, a convoy of asphalt bound for a midtown overpass. City inspectors hovered like vultures, clipboards ready, waiting for the Kings to stumble. Marcus led the convoy himself. When an inspector flagged a truck for excess weight, Marcus pulled out a second ledger, Camila's clean version, showing every number in perfect order. The inspector frowned, then waved them through. Behind the inspector's back, Raul's knife gleamed from Marcus's belt, a silent reminder of what would have happened if the papers hadn't been enough. By noon, the overpass was fed, the inspectors had their envelopes, and the city had its first taste of Asphalt Kings' legitimacy. Drivers cheered. For the first time, they weren't hustlers. They were contractors. Workers with badges, vests, and names and ledgers that mattered. Camila's warning. That night, Camila cornered Marcus in the yard office. Her notebook was full of numbers, but her eyes burned with anger. "You think signatures make us untouchable? Moretti owns every inspector you saw today. He let us pass. He's building us up so he can knock us down when it suits him." Marcus leaned on the desk, calm. "Then we take what he gives, and we build faster than he can destroy." Camila slammed her hand on the desk. "That's not strategy, Marcus. That's gambling. And gamblers always lose to the house." Marcus picked up Raul's knife, turned it in his hand. "Then we stop playing the house's game. We build our own." Closing scene. Later, standing alone in the yard, Marcus looked out at the city skyline. Trucks lined up like soldiers behind him, crowns faint in the moonlight. The contract sat in his pocket, folded neat, ink still fresh. On paper, he was a subcontractor. In truth, he was sharpening a blade in the dark. He whispered into the night, to Raul, to the city, to himself. "Paper crowns today. Steel crowns tomorrow." And the rumble of the trucks behind him sounded like applause. The Bronx woke to thunder that wasn't in the sky. It came from steel beams slamming against concrete, from jackhammers rattling through half-finished highways. The Cross Bronx project was already a battlefield, unions, mob bosses, and politicians all carving their slice. And now, Marcus Rivera stood in the middle of it. Rumors on the site. Word traveled faster than trucks. By the second week of Crown Hauling's contract, whispers ran through every job site. "Rivera pays fair. Rivera doesn't skim overtime. Rivera's drivers eat before inspectors eat." Those whispers bled into the ears of the construction workers, the men who poured asphalt, swung rebar, and went home with lungs full of dust. They had lived under Moretti's shadow for years, told when to work, how long, and for how little. One Monday morning, they snapped. Dozens of men dropped their tools at a midtown site, sat on girders, and refused to work. Their leader, a barrel-chested Irishman named Patrick Doyle, shouted loud enough for the whole block. "No more 12-hour days for 8-hour pay. No more envelopes cut in half while Moretti's boys drink champagne." By the time city supervisors arrived, the strike had already frozen traffic for 3 blocks. Marcus arrives. Marcus rolled up in a black Crown hauling truck, Luis Santoro beside him. Camila insisted on coming too, notebook in hand. The workers cheered when they saw Marcus climb out. To them, he wasn't just another subcontractor. He was the man who stared down Moretti and lived. Patrick Doyle stomped over, sweat dripping down his neck. "Rivera, you run trucks. We pour the damn asphalt, and we're done getting robbed. If you're really one of us, you'll stand with us." The supervisors, jittery and red-faced, leaned in. "Don't you dare feed this circus, Rivera. You're here to deliver, not to start a union war." Marcus said nothing. He lit a cigarette, inhaled, and watched the smoke curl into the morning air. Then he turned to Doyle. "What do you want?" "Overtime pay," Doyle growled. "Real breaks. Safety gear that isn't falling apart." Camila hissed at Marcus under her breath. "If you promise them, you'll be paying out of pocket. We'll bleed before we build." Marcus flicked ash onto the ground. "How many men?" Doyle gestured. 24 sat silent on the girders. Another 30 watched from the shadows. The whole site could fall apart in hours. Marcus nodded. "Fine. Double pay for overtime. Breaks on the hour. Safety gear by next week." The crowd erupted, cheers shaking the scaffolding. The supervisors nearly choked. "You don't have the authority." Marcus cut them off, voice low and sharp. "I have trucks. Without them, your site is stone and dust. Tell Moretti the Kings stand with the men." Backlash. That night, Anthony DeLuca showed up at the Rivera yard. His smile was gone. "You embarrassed us," he said flatly. "You turned a work stoppage into a circus. Do you know how much it costs to fix morale when you let mutts think they're lions?" Marcus met his gaze. "Mutts built this city. They bleed, we pay. Simple math." DeLuca's eyes narrowed. "Moretti doesn't like math that subtracts from his plate." Camila stepped in. "Then maybe he should start carrying the city instead of choking it." DeLuca's hand twitched toward his coat pocket, but Marcus didn't flinch. "Tell Moretti," Marcus said evenly, "that every man on those girders is mine now. And if he wants the road finished, he'll deal with me, not ghosts with cigars." Blood on the concrete. The next morning, Doyle's body turned up in a dumpster near the site. Shot twice in the chest. No wallet. No message, except the obvious one. Workers gathered in silence, eyes on Marcus. Some looked ready to walk away, others ready to riot. Marcus climbed onto a stack of rebar, Raoul's knife flashing at his belt. "They think killing one of us ends this," he said, voice carrying. "But Doyle's blood is a contract they can't erase. You don't go home. You don't bow. You build for yourselves. For the Kings. For every man who ever broke his back on this concrete while someone else stole his pay." The men roared. Tools clanged against steel like war drums. For the first time, Marcus wasn't just leading drivers, he was commanding labor. Claire's pen. That evening, Claire Donovan's byline hit the front page of the Daily News. "Gangster or Guardian? The rise of Marcus Rivera." Her article painted him as both, a criminal with blood on his hands, but also a man daring to stand against Moretti's empire. Camila was furious. "She's painting you into a corner. If the city thinks you're a saint, the first sin will damn you." But Marcus only stared at the paper, Doyle's name bold in print. "Good," he said. "Saints don't build empires. Martyrs do." The press didn't sleep. By the time Marcus Rivera woke, his name was already on every corner newsstand, carried in bold letters across the Daily News. Claire Donovan's article was everywhere. "Gangster or Guardian? The rise of Marcus Rivera." Beneath the headline, a grainy photo of Marcus at the Hunts Point yard stared back, jaw tight, cigarette dangling, crown-sprayed trucks lined up behind him. The article. Camila read aloud at the breakfast table, her voice dripping with disdain. "To some, Marcus Rivera is a gangster in a leather jacket, another face in New York's bloody underworld. To others, he is a guardian of the working man, a new kind of leader who defies the old mafia order and stands with the laborers who built this city. Whether king or criminal, one fact is undeniable. Rivera and his Asphalt Kings are rewriting the rules." She dropped the paper. "Do you realize what she's done? She's painted you into a myth. Myths don't survive scrutiny. Marcus buttered toast in silence, unbothered. Myths outlive bullets. Mama Lucia crossed herself, muttering in Spanish. Dios nos guard. They'll come for him faster now. The meeting. That night, Marcus found Claire waiting outside a diner in Hell's Kitchen. Neon lights painted her pale face pink and blue, her notebook tucked under one arm. You like the headline? She asked with a half smile. Marcus lit a cigarette. Half of it was lies. Claire's eyes sparked. The other half will make men follow you. Moretti rules with fear. You need something bigger. You need belief. Marcus exhaled smoke into the night. Belief doesn't stop bullets. No, she said, stepping closer. But it makes men step in front of them for you. Their eyes locked, fire meeting steel. For a moment, the city noise fell away. Marcus finally said, Why me? Why not write about the mayor, or the cops, or Moretti himself? Claire's smile turned sharp. Because you're the first man who scares them and inspires the rest at the same time. That's dangerous. That's history. A dangerous alliance. Claire began shadowing the Kings, riding in convoys, scribbling notes, asking questions no one else dared. The drivers didn't trust her, but Marcus let her stay. At the yard one afternoon, she watched Marcus inspect a rig. You play a dangerous game, Marcus. You stand on two thrones at once, one built of paper, one of blood. You can't sit on both forever. Marcus wiped grease from his hands. Then I'll build a third. She laughed softly, shaking her head. That's not how kingdoms work. He looked at her then, eyes dark but alive. It is now. Shadows of Raoul. That night, Marcus dreamed of Raoul again. His brother's voice echoed in the yard, half taunt, half warning. You let a reporter in? A girl with clean shoes and clean hands? She'll bleed us faster than any bullet. Marcus woke with sweat on his skin and Claire's words in his head. Belief makes men step in front of bullets. Moretti reacts. In Little Italy, Vincent Moretti read Claire's article under the glow of a desk lamp. His cigar smoke curled like a halo around his head. Guardian, he murmured, amused. They crown him a saint while he plays outlaw. DeLuca shifted nervously. Should we silence her? Moretti shook his head. No. Let the city worship him. The higher he climbs, the harder he falls. And when he does, he smiled thinly, the papers will print his obituary on the same page they printed his gospel. Closing scene. On a rooftop overlooking the Bronx, Marcus stood beside Claire, the city glittering below. Why do you care? He asked suddenly. You could walk away. Write about someone safer. Claire looked at him, hair whipping in the night wind. Because I want to see how far you'll go. And because part of me hopes you'll go far enough to break the city and survive it. Marcus turned back to the skyline, cigarette ember glowing in the dark. For the first time, he let himself imagine it. Not just survival, not just vengeance, but rule. And in that moment, belief felt heavier than any crown. The Bronx never stayed quiet for long. Even with Moretti's shadow looming and Claire's words buzzing in every paper, Marcus knew a storm was brewing from another direction. He just didn't expect it to hit so fast, or so personal. A new player. It started with a single truck that never made it back to the yard. Luis Santoro's rig. The old driver who had first shaken Marcus's hand at Hunts Point. The convoy radio went dead at 3 a.m. By dawn, all they found was the truck, abandoned under the Triborough Bridge, windshield spiderwebbed with bullet holes. Luis was gone. On the cab door, scrawled in red spray paint, was one word. Castillo. Camila read it with a tremor in her voice. Colombians. They've been circling for months. They want us to move their powder. Marcus's jaw tightened. We told them no. Raoul's knife gleamed at his belt as he whispered, "This is their answer." The message. That afternoon, a package arrived at the Rivera yard. Inside, a bloody trucker's cap. Luis's. And beneath it, a cassette tape. Marcus played it on an old deck. A voice thick with Spanish accent, smooth but cold, filled the room. "Senor Rivera, we admire your trucks. Strong, loyal, many drivers. But you insult us when you refuse business. Our product is the future. Cocaine. 1 kilo more valuable than a month of asphalt. You will carry it for us, or you will bury your drivers one by one." The tape clicked off. Silence. Camila's eyes burned. "If we bow now, we're done. We'll be cartel mules forever." Marcus's voice was low, certain. "We don't bow. We pull Luis out, and we burn their house down." "The raid," Claire warned him. "If you hit them, the city will see you as nothing more than another drug gang. The press will eat you alive." Marcus only said, "The press doesn't drive our trucks." That night, the Kings rolled heavy into Queens. 8 rigs, engines growling, headlights blacked out. Scouts had tracked Luis to a warehouse near the waterfront, cartel territory, guarded by men with shotguns and machetes. Marcus led the charge. Trucks rammed through the gates, chains snapping, steel screaming. Drivers poured out with tire irons and pistols. The yard erupted into chaos. Gunfire, engines, shouts in Spanish and English colliding like thunder. Marcus moved like a man possessed, Raoul's knife flashing, fists cracking bone. He found Luis tied to a chair in the back office, face swollen but alive. "Chief," Luis croaked when Marcus cut him free. "I knew you'd come." Marcus pulled him up, voice steady despite the blood splattered across his shirt. "Kings don't leave their own behind." Escalation. By dawn, the warehouse was nothing but ashes. The Kings had dragged Luis out alive and torched the cartel's stash. Millions in cocaine turned to smoke. The victory was loud, brutal, and costly. 2 drivers wounded, 1 dead. At the yard, Camila stitched a ledger full of lies to cover the war. Claire stood outside, notebook trembling in her hands. "You think you just won?" she said to Marcus. "You started a war with men who don't forget and don't forgive. This city can't protect you from them." Marcus lit a cigarette, blood still drying on his knuckles. "Good. Let them come. Asphalt doesn't burn as easy as powder." Castillo's vow. In Miami, word of the fire reached Emilio Castillo himself. He watched the smoke curl from his cigar and smiled. "This Rivera thinks he's a king," Castillo said. "Then we'll show him what happens when kings fight gods." He raised his glass, dark eyes glittering. "New York will drown in white dust before it wears his crown." Closing scene. Back in the Bronx, Marcus stood over the trucks lined in the yard, Luis beside him, battered but alive. The drivers looked at him with something new in their eyes. Not just fear, not just loyalty. Faith. Marcus spoke quietly, but every man heard him. "They took Raul. They tried to take Luis. Next, they'll come for all of us. So we don't wait for war anymore. We drive straight into it." The engines roared to life, one by one, until the whole yard shook. The Asphalt Kings weren't just a company now. They were an army. The city glittered like alive at night. Midtown's towers burned with gold light. Champagne poured in penthouses, and the men who pulled the strings of New York gathered under chandeliers worth more than most men's lives. And Marcus Rivera was invited. The invitation. Anthony DeLuca had delivered it with that same smooth smile. "A celebration," he said. "Mr. Moretti and Mr. Ross are hosting. Politicians, judges, contractors, the whole family. They want to see the new blood up close." Camila was suspicious. "It's a trap." Marcus only buttoned his black suit. "It's an opportunity." Mama Lucia kissed a rosary, pressing it into his pocket. You walk among wolves tonight. Don't forget you carry Raul's soul with you. Marcus kissed her forehead. Raul always walks with me. The Ross Mansion. The Ross estate sprawled across Fifth Avenue like a cathedral to greed. Valets whisked away limousines. Flashbulbs popped for arriving senators and businessmen. Inside, marble floors glistened, and a jazz quartet played for a sea of tuxedos and silk gowns. Cigars burned. Laughter rang false. At the center of it all sat Vincent Moretti, silver hair slicked, his hand heavy on a crystal glass. Beside him was Charles Ross, ruddy and jovial, the smile of a man who owned half the skyline. And there, in a silver dress that caught every shard of light, was Evelyn Ross, Claire's world and Moretti's pawn in one body. The room hushed as Marcus entered. A ripple passed across the crowd, whispers chasing his name. That's Rivera. The gangster. The union breaker. The king. Marcus walked through the silence with his head high, Raul's knife hidden beneath his jacket, and Camila at his side in a dark dress, eyes sharp as glass. Toasts and tension. Ross rose first, raising a glass. To the builders of New York, old and new. Tonight, we dine as one family. Applause thundered. Then Moretti stood, smile thin as a razor. And to young men with ambition, may they learn that ambition without respect is a fire that burns itself out. Eyes turned to Marcus. Waiting. Testing. Marcus lifted his glass. His voice carried steady, calm, but sharp enough to cut the chandelier's hum. To the men who lift the steel. To the drivers who bleed on these roads. To the laborers who make this city stand while others sit in rooms like this, pretending they built it. From now on, we don't beg at this table. We set our own. The room froze. Forks paused, glasses stilled. Camila's heart pounded. Claire, across the room with her notebook hidden in her clutch, watched like a hawk, eyes blazing. Evelyn's lips parted in something between awe and fear. Moretti's smile never cracked. Bold words, Mr. Rivera. Boldness can be admirable. It can also be fatal. Marcus drank, slow and deliberate. So can arrogance. The feast turns. Dinner resumed, but the air was poisoned. Conversations dropped to whispers. Deals shifted under the table. Marcus had marked himself not as a partner, but as a rival. When the band struck a slow tune, Evelyn approached Marcus. Her hand brushed his arm, her perfume sharp with roses. You're playing with fire, she whispered. Marcus met her gaze. Fire builds as much as it burns. Evelyn's eyes flicked to her father and Moretti, then back to Marcus. Just don't forget, you're dancing in their ballroom. And they own the floor. The threat. After dessert, Moretti motioned Marcus into the study, away from the crowd. The walls smelled of leather and tobacco, books lined in perfect order. Moretti poured 2 glasses of scotch. You think tonight made you strong, he said, voice calm. But all you did was tell a room full of wolves you want to be the lion. Do you know what wolves do to lions? Marcus sipped, eyes never leaving Moretti's. They run. Moretti chuckled. Enjoy your empire while it lasts, boy. 90 days. That's all I give you. And when your paper crowns burn, I'll be there to scatter the ashes. Marcus set his glass down untouched. Then I'll build with steel instead of paper. And steel doesn't burn. Claire's pen. Outside, Claire scribbled every word she could catch. In the flicker of candlelight, her hand shook, not from fear, but from the knowledge that tomorrow's headline would carry Marcus higher, or cut his throat. Closing scene. As Marcus and Camila left the mansion, Manhattan's skyline stretched before them like a kingdom of lights. Camila whispered, You just declared war in front of every man who matters. Marcus lit a cigarette, the flame small against the vast city glow. Good. Now they know who to fight. He exhaled smoke into the night. For a moment, the skyscrapers looked less like towers and more like battlements waiting to be taken. And somewhere deep inside, Marcus Rivera smiled, not because the war had begun, but because finally everyone knew it. Not subpoenas, violations, noise, idling, hazard lights. Wait. A stack of tickets thick as a cinder block appeared on Camila's desk at dawn, each stamped with a different city seal, each backdated by a week. By noon, 2 inspectors with coffee breath and dead eyes shut the Harlem River Yard for environmental review. Orange placards stapled to the fence like scars. Moretti's handwriting, Camila said, flipping pages. Different pens, same hand. Marcus didn't look at the tickets. He looked at the gate, where drivers crowded with folded arms and restless feet. We move anyway. Where? She asked. Our yard's a crime scene now. Then the city is the yard. They staged the convoy from a grocery parking lot off 149th. 8 rigs idling beneath a bruised sky, crowns glinting low on the fenders. Luis Santoro checked mirrors like a priest counting souls. Raoul's knife rode Marcus's belt, cold against his hip. Claire stood back by a newspaper box, no notebook out, just watching, as if pulling words from the air. Sirens drifted close, then farther, like sharks testing a cage. King 1 to convoy, Marcus said into the CB. Roll steady. We don't stop for anyone without a warrant and a badge number we can pronounce. Laughter crackled, thin but real. They took Willis to the Harlem River Drive, cut west into a grid that had memorized violence. At the 126th light, a patrol car ghosted alongside the lead truck, blues silent, one officer mouthing pull over with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Raoul wasn't here to grin back. Louis held speed, hands light on the wheel. The cruiser kept pace, then slipped away. That's one, Camila said from the jump seat, eyes on a crude paper map with X's where the city bled King's money. That's a rehearsal, Marcus said. The show's later. The show waited in a ribbon of brick and shadow near Lenox, an alley barely wider than a trailer, dumpsters like sleeping beasts tied to the walls, chain-link gate open like a grin. The delivery slip said rear loading. The street said don't. Front door's a circus, Camila said. Rear it is. In and out. Marcus scanned the roofs. Pigeons. Antennas. No glint he didn't expect. Single file, he said. No gaps. The lead rig nosed in. Metal kissed metal as mirrors cleared the brick by inches. Halfway down, the alley elbowed left, blind. Steam vented from a grate, white against the grime. The city's breath. The gate behind them clanged. Gate's closing, Louis said, voice gone dry. Hold, Marcus snapped. Nobody panic. The CB hissed, then died. Every radio light blinked out in a neat row, like candles pinched by invisible fingers. Jam, Camila said. They're jamming us. From the elbow ahead, a Ford panel van rolled into view, sideways across the passage, doors closed, engine low. Chain link scraped at their rear. The convoy was a stringed instrument pulled taut. Out, Marcus said. To a truck. Tools only. He dropped from his cab and went forward on foot, boots loud in the quiet. The city's noise fell away. A cat skittered. Someone coughed behind a window. Above, a shadow moved. Roof, Camila hissed. A bottle arced, glass belly lit with oil and fire. Marcus snatched a pallet and swung. The Molotov smashed and fanned across wet wood, heat licking his cheek. Flames roared and then choked. The pallet soaked it, smoking. Cute, Marcus said to the bricks. Try teeth. The van's rear doors flew open. For men in cheap masks and cheaper courage jumped out, bats and short pump shotguns flashing. 2 more spilled from a side door cut crudely into the paneling. They expected panic and a scatter. Instead, they saw men stepping off cabs in pairs, tire irons in hands, faces set like concrete. "Who do you belong to?" Marcus asked the alley. "City sanitation," the first masked man said, and swung. Marcus ducked, drove a shoulder into the man's ribs, and let him learn how brick remembers. Shotgun thundered, muzzle flashed strobing the narrow walls. Buckshot chewed a fender and howled down the alley. Louis's wrench fell, then rose, stained, bringing a scream with it. From the roof, another bottle bloomed fire. Camila dropped to a knee, snapped a flare, and skittered it into the fat lake of gasoline spreading from the van's open tank. A tongue of blue raced under the chassis and popped into a sheet of heat. The masked men yelped, recoiling. "Back!" one shouted. "Regroup!" Marcus grabbed him by the collar, wrenched the shotgun free, shoved him into the flames, and put 2 rounds into the van's block. The engine coughed and died. The alley filled with the stink of fried oil and fear. At the gate, chains screamed. A second van had rolled in behind their last truck and now burned with the first. The trap was full. A silhouette climbed the fire escape, metal crooning under boots. A third bottle flew. Marcus pivoted, grabbed the neck midair, heat blistering his palm, spun, and slung it back. It burst against the iron landing with a dragon's cough. A man screamed, falling through the new flame like a moth. "Push the van!" Marcus barked. 3 trucks forward. Bumpers tight. On my count. Drivers piled, shoulders to steel. Kings learned quickly. A truck is a fist if you teach it. Tires barked, rubber shrieking, and the stuck van slid an inch, then 2, then a foot, metal kissing brick in a hiss of paint and hate. From ahead, another chorus rose, the alley's far mouth filled with plain sedans, men stepping out without badges, without patience. "Lensless cops," Camila said. "Hired hands." A man at the far mouth raised a bullhorn. "This is private property. Abandon the vehicles." "In a minute," Marcus said, low to his men and louder to the mouth. "Got a warrant that can breathe underwater?" Bullets came instead, their punctuation. The alley went mad. Drivers dove under trailers and used axles for ribs of a shield. Shot tore clang-clang through corrugated dumpsters. Rust leapt like blood. Marcus felt the old calm arrive, the one that lived somewhere behind his lungs and came out only when concrete wanted memory. He slid along the hot skin of a trailer, counted the muzzle flashes, 2 left, 1 high, 1 wide, and popped the shotgun once, low. A shin cracked. The high flash fell. "Battery!" Camila shouted. She'd vanished behind a tool locker and now returned with a coil of jumper cables and a spool of copper wire. "Give me a fence." Marcus blinked. She grinned, feral. "Electric City." They ran the wire to the chain link at the rear, clamped metal to metal, and dropped the other end onto a battery yanked from the nearest sleeper. When the men at the gate tried to climb, the fence spat. Screams tangled with the buzz. 2 fell, twitching. "Push!" Marcus yelled. "Now!" The 3 front trucks gave one hungry shove. The van groaned and skated sideways just enough to show daylight, a slit of street, a slice of sky. "Go, go, go!" Lead rig punched through, mirrors sacrificing themselves with a shriek. The second followed, trailer kissing brick hard enough to leave paint. The third fishtailed, caught, and scraped through, sparks a carnival. The alley finally exhaled. Behind, the men at the gate regrouped, bullets angry again. A driver went down with a sound that was not a word. Louis hauled him by his belt with old shoulders that did not ask permission. "Get him in!" Marcus barked. "Cap 5!" The last two trucks pinned the burning van to the wall, blocking the rear, while Kings boiled out the front gap in sequence, like rounds leaving a magazine. The plain sedans scattered, courage evaporating in the face of 30 tons each. Then, because the city loves irony, a real squad car turned the corner, siren suddenly full volume, as if summoned by the smell of paperwork. The officer behind the wheel looked at the alley, then at the convoy, then at his partner, and decided to remember nothing. The Kings ran with it. They regrouped 3 blocks away, in a triangle of cracked blacktop behind a shuttered church. Engines ticked. A steam cloud rolled out of a bullet hole in a radiator like a ghost. Camila pressed rags to the wounded driver's shoulder. "Through and through," she said, voice steady and hands red. "You'll curse my stitches later." The man tried to laugh, failed, gripped her wrist. "You so straight, boss?" "As straight as the city lets me." Marcus walked the line. He made every eye meet his. He said each name out loud, like prayer in census. Men straighten when their names are spoken by a mouth that matters. He stopped at the end, where Claire waited under the church's shadow. Hair loose, eyes bright with something like fury and fear. "You could have died," she said softly. "They would have printed your obituary on page 1 and called it balance." "We didn't," he said. She stepped closer. "They'll set another trap. They'll keep setting them until you run out of alleys. Then we'll pay them," Marcus said. He glanced at her hand. It shook just once. "Write it," he added. Her jaw tightened. "You think I don't know my words are gasoline? You're asking me to pour. I'm asking you to choose where the match lands." She stared at him, then away, out to the trucks, the men, the bleeding. "I don't know how to save you," she whispered. "You're not here to save me. What am I here for?" "To make them watch." That night, Moretti read the police blotter and smiled with 2 teeth showing. "He survived," he told DeLuca. "Good. Let the city see him crawl out of its mouth. Heroes don't inspire until they bleed in public." "And the inspectors?" DeLuca asked. "Double them. Triple them. Shut every door he opens. And order the choir." "The choir?" Moretti lifted his glass. "The politicians. The preachers. Anyone who wears a clean collar and owns a microphone." At Mama Lucia's kitchen table, a wax-stiff candle guttered low as Camila spread fresh violations like taro. The wounded driver slept on the couch, snoring wetly. Marcus leaned in the window, watching his own reflection fade into the night. "Every permit we have just became a question," Camila said. "Every route we run just became a toll. They jammed our radios, boxed our rigs, and sent their dogs in dollar suits. We can't win 1,000 small fights." "We don't," Marcus said. "We win one big one." "And that is?" He turned. The city glowed behind him like a circuit board. "We steal their weather." Camila frowned. "In English, Marcus. We take a contract they can't afford to lose, and we deliver in front of the entire city," he said. "On camera. With the choir singing. We finish a job everyone says we can't. We make the mayor cut a ribbon with our crown on it. That's suicide. That's legitimacy." He tapped the stack of violations. "Paper kills us in shadows. Paper crowns us in daylight." A soft knock at the door. Claire slipped in, a thin folder in her hands. "I can't save you," she said again, like a confession. "But I can force them to pretend you matter." She laid the folder on the table. Inside, a schedule. City council hearings. A reroute plan for a failing Midtown overpass. A list of reporters Moretti owed favors and the ones he'd stiffed. "Pick the job," she said. "I'll bring the eyes." Marcus looked from the folder to Camila, to the knife on the table, to the city beyond the glass. "Then we build," he said. On live television. The candle winked out. In the sudden dark, the city's hum felt like a clock. 90 days. And the alleys had just run out. The Daily News office smelled of ink, sweat, and ambition. The presses below shook the floor, each thud like a drumbeat of truth or lies, depending on who paid the bills. Claire Donovan sat at her desk, typewriter silent, cigarette burning itself to ash. On her blotter lay 2 drafts of the same story. One called Marcus Rivera a criminal mastermind who hijacked the city with blood and steel. The other painted him as the voice of the forgotten laborer, the man who stood against Moretti and cartel gods alike. Both were true. Both were false. And whichever she filed would decide not just Marcus's fate, but her own. Pressure. Her editor leaned on her desk, belly spilling against the wood, tie stained with coffee. The board's breathing down my neck, Claire. The mayor's office called twice. They want Rivera nailed. We run him as a gangster, full stop, or you're off this beat. Claire met his eyes, unblinking. And if I don't file at all? Then you're done. You'll be lucky to cover dog shows in Jersey. He walked off, leaving her with the smoke and the silence. Claire stared at the 2 drafts. Her hands trembled. At the yard. That night, she went to the King's yard. The trucks stood lined like sentinels, their crowns faint in the lamplight. Drivers clustered in small knots, murmuring, some smoking, some just staring at the skyline as if waiting for a bullet. Marcus was in the office, Raoul's knife planted in the desk like a signature. Camila hovered over ledgers, snapping figures at him. You want to pay workers double while inspectors triple their bribes? It doesn't add up. It will, Marcus said. Once the city sees we're inevitable. Claire stepped inside. The room stiffened. Marcus looked up. His face was calm, but his eyes carried every alley, every gunshot, every ghost. You're bleeding in public, Claire said softly. They're waiting for me to write the obituary. All I have to do is file one story, and you're finished. Marcus didn't flinch. Then file it. Camila slammed her notebook shut. Marcus. But he raised a hand. If the city believes I'm a monster, then so be it. Monsters get remembered. Claire's throat tightened. And if I don't write it? If I paint you as the guardian instead of the gangster? Marcus leaned back, cigarette glowing. Then they'll fear me more than they fear Moretti. And fear is the only ballot that counts. Confession. Later, on the roof above the yard, Claire found him alone. The city stretched endless, neon bleeding into the night sky. I don't know why I'm here, she whispered. You're here because you want to see if a man can break the city without breaking himself. And can you? Marcus didn't answer. He turned, the ember of his cigarette painting his jaw in firelight. Write what makes them follow me. That's the only way either of us survives. Claire's eyes filled with tears. That's not survival, Marcus. That's damnation. He stepped closer. Then damn me. But don't bury me. Her breath caught. For a moment, the city vanished. No guns, no crowns, no headlines. Just 2 people on a rooftop, choosing between love and betrayal. Claire kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, like a confession neither of them could print. The choice. The next morning, the presses thundered. Claire's story ran front page. The King of Asphalt, savior or scourge? It was both gospel and indictment, a double-edged sword. Marcus was no longer a rumor in alleys. He was a symbol in print. The city would rally to him, or destroy him. Closing scene. Moretti read the paper in his leather chair, lips curling into a thin smile. Good, he murmured. Let the people crown him. That way, when we cut his head off, the city will watch. DeLuca frowned. And Donovan? Moretti's smile widened. She's his sharpest blade, and his softest wound. Both will bleed him in the end. The Hudson River stank of oil and rot that summer night. Barges moaned against their moorings, cranes swung overhead like giants half asleep, and shadows moved on the pier with purpose. Marcus Rivera stood at the edge of the dock, cigarette ember glowing, Raoul's knife heavy on his hip. Behind him, King's trucks lined up in silence, steel beasts waiting for orders. Ahead, under floodlights too bright for midnight, a new enemy made his entrance. Arrival of the Prince. Luca Mancini. Son of Don Carlo Mancini, heir to an Italian dynasty that had bankrolled Moretti's empire for decades. He stepped from a black limousine in a tailored suit cut too sharp for New York humidity, gold chain gleaming against his chest. He was young, maybe 30, with slick hair and the arrogance of someone who had never been told no. At his back moved a dozen soldiers in leather gloves, their weapons half hidden, but their intent clear. "Rivera," Luca said, voice smooth as imported wine. "The city speaks your name like it belongs to you." "That's adorable." Marcus flicked ash into the river. "Names belong to whoever survives them." Luca smirked. "Cute. But let's be honest, you're a trucker who found a crown in the gutter. I'm a prince. I was born to rule." "The offer." Luca spread his hands. "Here's the truth. Castillo's cartel wants New York. Moretti's tired. My father sees opportunity. So we carve the city like a feast. You get scraps, maybe Harlem and the Bronx, and you bow when we tell you. Or—" He snapped his fingers. One of his soldiers opened a crate. Inside, stacks of cocaine bricks, stamped and wrapped, worth millions. "You carry for us. One shipment earns more than your whole fleet of asphalt. Imagine what you could buy." Marcus stared at the bricks, then at Luca. His voice was low, steady. "I don't haul poison. Steel and stone feed families. Powder buries them." Luca laughed, cold and bright. "You think you're righteous? You think the city cares? It eats what we feed it. And men like you either serve or drown." Marcus stepped forward, eyes dark. "Then watch me swim." Shots fired. The first bullet cracked the night before words could settle. One of Luca's soldiers dropped, throat blooming red. Camilla's shot from the shadows. Chaos erupted. Gunfire tore through the dock, sparks flying as bullets kissed steel. Drivers scrambled behind their rigs, firing back with pistols and shotguns hidden under seats. Luca ducked behind a crate, shouting in Italian. His soldiers fanned out, spraying lead. Marcus charged, Raoul's knife flashing in the floodlight. He slammed a man against a container, steel ringing, blade carving fast and final. Another lunged with a bat. Marcus caught it, drove his knee up, then his elbow down. Bone crunched. Luis Santoro roared from the cab of a rig, flooring it forward. The truck smashed through crates, scattering cartel gunmen like ants. Face to face. Smoke stung the air. Flames licked at spilled fuel. The dock had become a war zone. Marcus found Luca in the chaos, crouched behind a crate with a pistol drawn. Their eyes locked. For a moment, time froze. The king and the prince. "You should have taken the deal," Luca hissed. Marcus stepped closer, Raoul's knife glinting. "Crowns are given. They're taken." Luca fired. The shot grazed Marcus's arm. Marcus didn't flinch. He closed the distance, slammed Luca's wrist against the crate until the pistol clattered to the ground. The knife drove home, deep into Luca's chest. The prince gasped, eyes wide with disbelief, as Marcus whispered against his ear, "Kings are earned, not inherited." Marcus ripped the blade free. Luca crumpled to the dock, blood pooling dark as oil. Aftermath. Gunfire sputtered, then died. Mancini's men scattered, dragging their wounded, leaving their prince in the dirt. The king stood bloody but alive, trucks idling like beasts still hungry. Camila emerged, face pale but fierce. You just killed the heir of an empire. His father won't let this stand. Marcus wiped the blade on his sleeve. Good. Let him come. The crown doesn't pass bloodlines anymore. It passes fire. Claire appeared from the shadows, notebook clutched but unused. Her voice trembled. Do you know what you've done? This isn't a gang war anymore. This is history. Marcus looked down at Luca's corpse, then back at the skyline beyond the river. History doesn't scare me, he said. Being forgotten does. Closing scene. Far away, in a marble villa in Naples, Don Carlo Mancini heard the news. His son, dead in New York. He poured a glass of wine, hands trembling, and whispered, Blood crowns blood. And the war grew darker. The Hudson still reeked of blood and gasoline when word reached the Bronx. Luca Mancini, prince of an empire, was dead by Marcus Rivera's hand. The news traveled across oceans before dawn. Naples swore revenge. Manhattan bristled. And inside the king's own yard, something darker festered. Michael's shadow. Michael Rivera had always been the youngest, the quiet one. Where Raoul swung fists and Marcus wielded vision, Michael simmered with envy. He wanted a seat at the table, but his brothers never let him hold the knife. Now Raoul was gone, and Marcus ruled alone. Michael poured himself whiskey in a Harlem bar, flanked by strangers in silk suits, Moretti's men. Anthony DeLuca slid into the booth, pale eyes glittering. Young blood, DeLuca said. You don't look like a soldier. You look like a general waiting for an army. Michael sneered. My brother thinks he's a king. He doesn't see he's building a coffin. DeLuca leaned closer. Then step out of his shadow. Deliver us something Marcus never would powder. You run one convoy for Castillo's men, prove your worth. The city will see you as the Rivera who saved it from your brother's arrogance. Michael's hand shook around the glass, but he nodded. Tell me when and where. Suspicion. At the yard, Camila's numbers didn't add up. A truck gone too long. A ledger entry too clean. She cornered Marcus late at night, the city buzzing beyond the fence. Michael's hiding something, she said. Marcus frowned. He's my brother. He's also ambitious, Camila snapped. Ambition without loyalty is a knife in the dark. Marcus wanted to deny it. He wanted to believe Raoul's ghost hadn't cursed them. But in his gut, the truth already gnawed. The sting. 2 nights later, Marcus tailed Michael. A convoy of 3 trucks rolled south toward Queens, heavy and slow. Too slow for asphalt. Marcus followed in silence until the convoy pulled into a deserted warehouse. Cartel men waited with open crates, white bricks gleaming under floodlights. Marcus stepped from the shadows, Raoul's knife in hand. Michael, he said, voice low. Tell me it isn't what it looks like. Michael froze. His men shifted uneasily. Finally he spat. What did you expect me to do? Bow forever? Watch you turn us into martyrs? This was my chance to make us untouchable. Marcus's jaw tightened. Untouchable? With poison? You'd sell our crown for dust and plastic? Michael's eyes burned with resentment. You don't own the crown, Marcus. You stole it when Raoul died. I'm taking it back. Brothers in the dark. The cartel men backed away. They knew this wasn't their fight. This was family. Michael drew a pistol. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. Step aside, brother. Marcus didn't move. He only whispered, Raoul's watching. Michael's face twisted. Raoul followed you into the grave. I won't. The shot rang out. Marcus staggered, shoulder burning. Michael had pulled the trigger. But before Michael could fire again, Marcus lunged. Raoul's knife flashed in the floodlight, burying itself in Michael's chest. Michael gasped, eyes wide with shock. His pistol clattered to the floor. Marcus caught him as his knees buckled. "You were supposed to stand with me," Marcus whispered, voice breaking. Michael's lips trembled. "I wanted to be you." Then he was gone. Aftermath. The cartel melted into the night, leaving only silence and blood. Marcus stood alone in the warehouse, holding Raul's knife slick with his brother's life. Camila found him hours later, Michael's body laid across the hood of a truck. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She only stared, face pale as ash. "You killed him," she whispered. Marcus's eyes were hollow. "No. He killed himself the moment he chose them over us." Camila's hands trembled around her notebook. "First Raul. Now Michael. Who's next, Marcus?" "Me." He looked away. The crown on his head grew heavier by the second. Closing scene. That night, Claire wrote in her journal, not for print, not for the world, just for herself. "Power doesn't destroy Marcus. Family does. And one day, when the last Rivera falls, the city will still stand. But he will be nothing more than a man buried beneath his own crown." The city was quieter than usual. Not because the violence had stopped. Violence never stopped in New York. But because everyone was waiting. Waiting to see if Marcus Rivera would live long enough to claim the crown he had been carving from blood and concrete. The fall of Moretti. Vincent Moretti's empire cracked first. 3 weeks after Luca Mancini's death, his allies in the Union started whispering to the feds. Inspectors who once wore his pocket like a second wallet suddenly vanished. Judges turned cold. One autumn night, as Marcus's trucks rolled through Midtown, Moretti's car exploded outside a club in Little Italy. No fingerprints, no suspects. Just smoke, twisted chrome, and a name erased from the skyline. De Luca swore it was the Colombians. Others said it was the feds. Marcus knew better. The city had decided Moretti's time was over, and Marcus's time had begun. The city bows. Crown hauling became more than a front. City contracts, once hidden in shadows, now bore the Rivera name. Asphalt Kings patched roads from Harlem to Brooklyn, built overpasses, and resurfaced highways that carried millions of lives every day. Politicians who once sneered now shook Marcus's hand in front of cameras. Preachers blessed his drivers. Newspapers called him the man who paid New York. But Marcus knew the truth. Behind the ledgers and ribbons, there were graves. Raul, Michael, Patrick Doyle, nameless drivers who bled in alleys. The crown sat heavy, forged from steel and soaked in loss. Claire's farewell. One night, Claire came to the penthouse. The city glittered below, glass towers reflecting the glow of a man who had everything. But her eyes carried sorrow. "I can't do this anymore," she said softly. "Every word I write for you feels like I'm painting over blood. I thought I could stand beside you, but I see now you're not building a future. You're building a mausoleum." Marcus poured 2 glasses of scotch. Only one was touched. "You gave me a kingdom," he said. "Don't take it back." Claire's tears caught the city lights. "You don't need me to take it back. You already lost it the moment you killed your brother." She left. The elevator doors closed. And Marcus was alone again. Camila's transformation. Camila didn't leave. But she was no longer the sister with ledgers and worry. She became steel. Cold, sharp, efficient. She turned the king's books into fortresses, laundered millions through shell companies, and sat at the table with men who once dismissed her. Yet the warmth in her eyes was gone. Even with Marcus, she spoke like an accountant reading numbers, not a sister sharing blood. The family was gone. Only the empire remained. The Iron Crown. On a foggy November morning, Marcus stood alone on a balcony overlooking the Cross Bronx Expressway, the road that had once been the city's curse and now was his empire's spine. Trucks thundered below, each carrying asphalt, steel, stone. Each carrying his name in silence. On his desk behind him lay three things: Raoul's knife, Michael's pistol, Claire's final article, folded and worn. Marcus lit a cigarette, the ember glowing like the last star in a dying sky. "The city didn't crown me," he whispered to the empty air. "I crowned myself." He slipped Raoul's knife into his belt, as if to remind himself who he once was. He touched Michael's pistol, as if to remind himself of the price. And he looked down at the city, endless and hungry. "Crowns are heavier than coffins," he said. The roar of the trucks below answered, engines like a choir. Final image. Marcus Rivera, king of asphalt. A man who won the city but lost his soul. A man remembered not for love, nor for family, but for the roads that still carry New York, paved with steel, sweat, and blood. The iron crown gleamed, unseen, on his head. Fade to black.